Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest updates from the world of sports, gambling, and pop culture. Because you can't have a show without hot takes or a Tiger King meme these days. Know what I'm saying? Now, with over 200 episodes and ready to get after it again, here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Good evening and welcome to the show, everyone. Got a bit of NFL news to talk about, but first, let's just dive into what transpired over the last couple of days with the implosion of the European Super League over in the world of soccer. And I'll be honest, I did get caught by surprise with this result, because you'd swear with the amount of money involved and the folks involved with the ownership of these clubs, that all the English Premier League teams, all 6 of them that were involved in this Super League, you would think that there would have been some thought process going into handling the PR of the fallout of when this got announced. Because this turned into a situation where the Super League was framed as the rich teams versus the poor teams, and the rich teams are going to try to shaft everyone. And British politicians took exception to that, started stating that they would launch investigations into the clubs. Boris Johnson was very vocal about that, the British Prime Minister. And these soccer clubs had no actual PR response other than, we did not expect the fans to react so negatively to the news. These clubs so completely and utterly failed to read the room. This should have always have been positioned as a Super League was going to happen one way or another, no matter what. Spanish soccer clubs are going to try to take advantage of us. This is our best opportunity to negotiate on the ground floor now, and we are going to work towards being able to invite more English teams to be able to qualify for the Super League in the future. But this is just the ground floor and our attempt to usurp control from FIFA and UEFA. I mean, a competent PR firm would have been able to spin that and sell the story internally to make sure that you didn't have you basically had mass riots. I mean, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and you got folks outside of every major soccer stadium, I mean, being at risk of spreading COVID, but, protesting over a soccer league that hasn't even started yet. I mean, it was surreal seeing all these scenes of soccer fans united together in one front. Now, was I in favor of the Super League? No. But if you're telling me that FIFA and UEFA are absolved from any responsibility in this, no, they're not either. I mean, this was halves versus other halves. But the fact that these Premier League clubs could not have done a worse messaging job whatsoever with a plan that had billions on the table in terms of revenue from TV packages. So now you pull out of the Super League, you're faced with fines from pulling out of the Super League, you're going to face fines from UEFA for your decision to try to break away from them and slink back to them with your tail between your legs. You got fan fallout of folks canceling season tickets. I mean, this is an unmitigated disaster. Manchester United chairman Ed Woodward has finally stepped down. I mean, United has been pretty much mediocre throughout his entire tenure, which is what he should have been fired for. But the fallout from this is people needed heads to roll, and so Woodward took the fall for United, but the Glazer family basically had their PR team basically say, yeah, we did it, but, we are always going to explore other options, showing how little they care. Like, they only got mad that they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. Not about the idea itself, but this idea was so poorly executed from just a messaging standpoint that it's clearly obvious that no thought went into the messaging. They just thought people would be happy about the announcement of a Super League. And maybe my life goal should have been to work with some of these professional teams to handle messaging, because, not being able to read the room that this would be received negatively at first. I mean, realistically, the first 48 to 72 hours was always going to be the worst from a reaction standpoint. And then you were always going to face some measure of fans protesting outside. But they handled the first 48 to 72 hours so poorly by having nothing in terms of talking points prepared that it only built the increased resentment. And it turned this Super League idea into something that they could revolt against in a populist type movement. That's what you saw over the weekend. I mean, it was utterly surreal watching how many people were united against that European Super League idea because they had no talking points whatsoever to defend their decision to break away from UEFA and FIFA, other than we wanted to make more money. That's literally the only things that they discussed. They had no actual talking points about how unfair UEFA and FIFA are, about the scheduling and the impact on players and their staff and their family. Like, they could have come up with a number of BS excuses to at least address the fact that they wanted more money. We all know they want more money, but you at least have to be able to come up with a cogent argument to disguise the fact that you were angling for more money. And they didn't even bother doing that. So, the European Super League is basically all but dead. I mean, yes, can the Spanish clubs do it on their own? Kinda, but I just don't see it having any legs without the impact of the English clubs in there. I mean, they can reach out to some of the other regions, but the reason why they didn't reach out to them in the first place is they don't have enough drawing power, and the Bundesliga was very much against the Super League idea. They were not gonna go be down for that. So I really have a tough time seeing the Super League survive without the Premier League clubs, but we'll see how it goes. It's an ongoing story, but the major blow has been dealt with the English teams literally running back with their tail between the legs because they didn't actually have a plan of executing it beyond announcing that they're going to join a Super League. Unbelievable. But with that being said, I want to do a quick preview before the NFL draft tomorrow night. A lot of talk about quarterbacks in this draft, and I don't really know why, because, everyone knows Trevor Lawrence is going number one to the Jaguars, but I'll be perfectly blunt with everyone listening to this. This is not a great QB draft. I mean, Justin Fields has upside, but he carries a lot of risks, too. I mean, to be honest, Fields, from a peripheral standpoint, is a slightly better version of what Dwayne Haskins was coming out of the draft. And we saw what happened to Dwayne Haskins with the lack of experience, and more importantly, the lack of maturity on the part of Dwayne Haskins. I don't think Fields is that much better than Dwayne Haskins. But all these other QBs getting talked about, between Trey Lance, you got Mac Jones being talked about with the 49ers, like all these other QBs being talked up, and Zach Wilson, like these QBs are not good. I'll flat out say these are not top of the first round QBs. These are maybe back end of the first round, second round QB selections being taken this early. I don't understand these NFL teams. The Jets, they made a big stink about drafting Sam Darnold, never gave him proper support after drafting him, after the Giants passed on him and took Saquon Barkley without having an offensive line. But, I'm not, we'll deal with the Giants another time. But, the Jets completely botched Sam Darnold. They didn't want to pay Sam Darnold his 5th-year option. So instead, when they fell to the number 2 spot because they won more games than they should have, they decide to trade Sam Darnold. And by trade Sam Darnold, barely get any value for him when trading him to Carolina. And now the Jets are left with the scenario where they have to draft a QB. And undoubtedly, every single one of these QBs will be worse than what they had with Sam Darnold when they originally drafted him. And these teams wonder why they continue to suck. I'll be blunt. The projection for the Jets would be to take either Trey Lance or Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, the quarterback from BYU, is a worse version of, and I keep making the joke about it, but I'm not gonna. I can't deny it. Like, Taysom Hill is a better quarterback than Zach Wilson, and Taysom Hill is not an NFL quarterback. He just has to be the guy that Sean Payton is obsessed with in New Orleans. But Zach Wilson basically has the exact same peripherals as Taysom Hill. Yeah, could he actually? Does he have some arm strength? Yes, but he can't throw these routes. Looking at the tape, I don't understand what is this obsession with Zach Wilson. It just does not even remotely come close to look like an NFL ready QB, and that's the guy you're going to start week 1. I don't understand these teams. I really don't. If anything, you could have drafted one of these QBs and just had Darnold there as a mentor, and they're like, oh, it's going to be too awkward. Yeah, you know what's awkward? Get your butt handed to you for 17 weeks now, because the NFL season is 17 weeks, not 16, 17 weeks. You got 17 weeks of getting trounced because you have far and away the worst QB in the division from the jump, and you have no shot at competing if you're the Jets. None. Because you have a bunch of other issues, which is why Sam Darnold didn't work out, because you can't protect your QB, which was the whole point why Sam Darnold didn't work in New York. The offensive line got too old. They never addressed Mangold. Nick Mangold retired how many years now? 4? The Jets have not come close to addressing that offensive line even remotely adequately. It's the same issues the Giants have, and they wonder why they stink as teams. But hey, if that's what they want to do, so be it. But yes, after the number 1 pick being Trevor Lawrence, you have the Jets number 2, likely to take Zach Wilson, which makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. In the 3rd spot, you have the 49ers, who traded up with the Dolphins and gave up a bunch of picks to the Dolphins. I still don't understand. Again, I mock these trades because I just don't understand. I really don't understand how these teams are keep trading up for QBs in a weak QB draft. And the thing is, the 49ers traded up for 3, and the reports are that Kyle Shanahan is in love with Mac Jones. The 49ers were basically trading up a couple of 3rd-round picks and their 1st-round picks for 2022 and 2023 for a system QB. Mac Jones is a system QB. I'm sorry. A system QB does not go top 5 in the NFL draft. It just does not happen. I don't care if Kyle Shanahan is half as good as the NFL guru he is. He can find a way of making it work with the QBs he's already got, because all the other QBs he's got are just as good as Mac Jones is right now. And Trey Lance, I I just don't understand the Trey Lance obsession. But hey, I get that he's from North Dakota State. You have you can make the comparisons to Josh Allen. He's not nearly as good as Josh Allen was when he played and at Montana. I mean, you had Carson Wentz, who graduated from North Dakota State. You know, folks would say Carson Wentz is done. I think Carson Wentz just got in a bad way in Philadelphia. But, you know, if you're telling me looking at the tape that Trey Lance compares to Carson Wentz or Josh Allen, I'm just wondering what tape are we looking at here? Because, again, these NFL QBs have not looked even like the prospects have not looked even remotely close to what we've seen in the past couple of years. So, again, I know I'm going to sound like a wet blanket, but, you know, these QBs just do not even remotely look close to decent value, and yet still that's all that's being talked about here. So, yeah, the 49ers are either taking Mac Jones most likely or Trey Lance, but neither option looks all that great. I mean, compared to what they already have with Jimmy G, but Shanahan wants to move on for Garoppolo, and, you know, he's going to get what he wants. At number 4, we got the Falcons, which is an interesting case here because I've been crushing Matt Ryan for years about Matt Ryan being done, and that, you know, you could have exchanged him for Matt Stafford and actually be better off if you were the Falcons. But you know, I just don't see what they're gonna do here. It could very well be that they take Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida, even though it makes no sense. Like, Atlanta needs to trade this pick back. As I said, I don't think there's a true franchise QB in this draft beyond Trevor Lawrence. I think those of you listening to me right now can obviously tell how down I am on the QBs in this draft, even though there seems to be everyone and their mother seems to be trying to trade up for them. I just don't see the QB here. But, you know, outside of, you know, you want to take a chance, roll the dice on Justin Fields, I can at least justify that it being a franchise QB. I can at least justify it being Justin Fields. But Atlanta has so many issues going on, needing offensive line help, and also Atlanta's defense just being a hot mess, top to bottom, and needing a complete overhaul and influx of talent. They need to trade this pick down. But will they trade it down? I don't know. I could easily see Atlanta taking a splashy pick like Pitts at tight end, even though they already have Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. And apparently they were listening to trade talks for Julio Jones. If they move Julio, okay, I could see making the trade. Making the pick for Cal Pitts and trading Julio Jones and getting more draft picks to actually shore up the rest of the squad. Okay, because Kyle Pitts, even though he's a tight end, I think he's actually, you can make a case that he's the best wide receiver in the draft. He really is someone that can be split out wide, have no problems going up against cornerbacks or safeties and catching the ball. I think you can make an argument that he is the best wide receiver in the draft, even though he's a tight end. All right, at 5, you got the Bengals. Jamar Chase pretty much seems to be the lock pick here. The wide receiver at LSU played with Joe Burrow. It just seems as though this is a lock. And they need a lot of help. So it could be that they take Chase, but if they don't take Chase, it's going to be the Bengals stealing Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle out of Oregon, from the Dolphins. You know, this is, and this would be a disaster for the Dolphins if the Bengals actually take Sewell, because Dolphins traded back with the 49ers and then traded up with the Eagles to get to 6. If they somehow miss out on Kyle Pitts and Sewell at 6, the Dolphins are going to look incredibly foolish. And it doesn't matter if they end up with Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith. If they miss out on Pitts and Sewell, who are the top 2 targets they had the entire year heading into this draft, it's going to be a failure. So at 6, the Dolphins pick very much depends on what happens at 5 with the Bengals. And the Bengals and the Falcons could easily bone the Dolphins and put them in a bad spot. At 7, you got the Lions. The Lions have been reportedly trying to trade up to take Jamar Chase. If they don't get Chase, which pretty much it seems likely that there's not going to be a trade. I think Jalen Waddle, the wide receiver out of Alabama, is going to be the pick here. And, the Lions are a mess. I mean, they could draft whoever they want. Like, Detroit's going to be in the garbage bin for a while. So let's move on because I don't feel like talking about the Lions and all the issues they got. When Matthew Stafford says you're not good enough for him, you've got issues. At 8, you got the Panthers, and before the Darnold trade, this was likely going to be a QB pick. Now I could see them making some trades to shore up the rest of that roster. So it should be interesting. At 9, you got the Broncos, and another spot where it was going to be QB, but the Broncos made a trade for Teddy Bridgewater, who's on his way out from Carolina because of the Sam Darnold trade with the Jets. And if I'm the Broncos, why am I rushing to take a QB when I'm going to get a steady Eddie QB in Teddy Bridgewater? It doesn't make any sense trying to get another QB unless Justin Fields falls. And if Justin Fields falls ahead of some of the other guys being mentioned here, I don't know. Like, Justin Fields falling in favor of Mac Jones and Trey Lance, to me, is just hilarious. But, it's possible, but it'd be hilarious. But realistically, at the Broncos at 9, I kind of look at it and say, trading back seems to be the most likely play here that they should do. But they could go defense. Patrick Surtain II should be going to the Cowboys. Like father, like son. Surtain eventually did play for the Cowboys. Surtain didn't make his name with the Dolphins though. But Surtain played well at Alabama. The Cowboys need cornerbacks in the worst way. Now, could the Cowboys use offensive line help? Yes, but there's not enough offensive linemen early in this draft to make it work, so I don't necessarily see that play working out. At 11, my Giants. Oh, what a mess of a roster Dave Gettleman has left us. Here's the thing with the Giants. They need to trade this back. They need to trade it back in the worst way. And Gettleman likely is just going to pick Devonta Smith, the wide receiver from Alabama. Here's the problem. I don't think that there's enough there that Smith brings to the table that you aren't already getting with Kenny Golladay being signed in free agency. And the Giants' offense is basically screwed as long as the offensive line is bad. Andrew Thomas had a average to mediocre first year, playing out of position at left tackle. Jury's still out if he can actually be a starting NFL left tackle. And Tristan Wirfs in his rookie year at Tampa proved that he's an all-pro right tackle. So, it's one of those things where the Giants missed out on all the good. Like, they may have actually taken the first tackle, but they may have taken the worst of the bunch because Andrew Thomas may end up looking like a tweener because Mekhi Becton had a monster year for the Jets on the left side at left tackle. In spite of everyone else on the Jets looking bad on the offensive line, Mekhi Becton was a monster at left tackle. So, the issues Darnold faced was coming up the middle. It wasn't from his blind spot. But, the Giants need to trade this back and actually start rebuilding that offensive line in the worst way. Because if Daniel Jones has any shot of succeeding, which I doubt, but if there's any shot of it happening, it's got to be with a trade back and building out that offensive line. And, rounding out the top 12, you got the Eagles, and there's a number of ways they could go, but, I'm going to say that it's probably going to be defense for the Eagles. They haven't drafted defense all that much outside of defensive back, so I think they go linebacker here with Mekhi Parsons out of Penn State. But the Eagles have so many issues that it's really hard to kind of project. And, that kind of rounds out the top 12. But in terms of other names you should be taking a look out for later on in the first round, Rashawn Slater plays all over the offensive line in his career at Northwestern. Could play center, could play guard, could play tackle. The problem is that, as I've learned over the years, having tweeners is great in college. If they're still a tweener in the pros, usually it means that they're not all that great at their individual position. So, but someone to keep an eye out for because the Giants could draft him as well. Zaven Collins, pass rusher out of Tulsa, has been making some noise. Kwity Paye, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Interesting pick that could happen here. And Elijah Vera Tucker, the offensive tackle at USC, that's another guy in the top half of the first round that could definitely be in play here. So, in terms of the first round, I definitely expect to see at least 5 QBs go. We could still see, some randomness go on, because obviously we got Mac Jones still being in the mix. You got Fields, obviously, and the Smith fascination with the Jets, I just can't get over. But you're gonna get 5 QBs in this first round. You could get more. I mean, there's no doubt that these NFL teams are so hyped up for QBs that you could still see another QB drafted in the first round somewhere. I just don't see it happening that Kellen Mond makes it into the first round. I don't see Kellen Mond making it into the first round, but crazier things have happened because he would be the next guy off my board to go as a QB. So, late first round, you could see someone trade back in if they really like Mond. But outside of that, it's going to be QBs taken in the first round again. But, man, there's only one franchise QB that I see being Lawrence and a lot of big question marks. Even Fields, still a lot of question marks. So we'll see how the draft goes. But, there are going to be some very disappointed NFL teams in a couple of months when they start seeing some of these rookies that they went for. But that's just my opinion. But we'll see how it plays out. And obviously, as the draft goes along, we'll start recapping it as well. So that's all for now. But have a good one, folks.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.